In this video, I'm going to cover multipliers. Consider why do cities want the Super Bowl to be held in their stadium? An initial change in spending will set off a spending chain that's magnified in the economy. So if Bobby spends $100 on Jason's product, Jason now has more money to spend so that he can buy some of Nancy's product. Nancy now has more money so she can buy Tiffany's product, and so on. The multiplier effect shows how spending is magnified in the economy. If the government spends $5 million, will aggregate demand increase by the same amount? No, aggregate demand will increase even more as government spending becomes income for other consumers. Consumers will take that money and spend it, thus increasing aggregate demand. How much will aggregate demand go up? That depends on how much of the new income consumers decide to save. If they save a lot, spending and aggregate demand will go up less. If the opposite happens, then aggregate demand is going to increase a lot. The marginal propensity to consume calculates how much people consume rather than save when they have a change in their disposable income. It's always expressed as a fraction, and it's calculated by taking the change in consumption over the change in disposable income. The marginal propensity to save calculates how much people save rather than consume when they have a change in their disposable income. And that's calculated by taking the change in savings over the change in disposable income. The marginal propensity to save is equal to 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. And why is this true? Because consumers have two choices. You can either spend your money through consumption or you can save it. If the marginal propensity to consume is 0.5, how much is the spending multiplier? There's two ways to calculate it. You can take 1 over the marginal propensity to save, or 1 over 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. So if the multiplier is 4, how much will an initial increase of $5 in government spending increase GDP? And how much will a decrease of $3 in spending decrease GDP? The total change in GDP is calculated by taking the multiplier times the initial change in spending. Assume the marginal propensity to consume is 0.5 for everyone, and assume the Super Bowl comes to town and there's an increase of $100 in sales at Ashley's restaurant. Ashley has $100. She saves 50 and spends 50 at Carl's. Carl now has 50, so he's going to save 25 and spend 25. And Dan now has $25 more of income. So this would continue until every penny is either spent or saved. So what's the multiplier effect and what's the total change in GDP? Total change in GDP is the multiplier times the initial change. Your multiplier would be 2 using the formula of 1 divided by the MPS, or 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. So if the MPC is 0.5, we know that the MPS has to be also be 0.5. So 1 divided by 0.5 is 2. Then the total change in GDP would be 2 times 100, and that would be $200. Take a look at this question, and the answer is E. Here's some more practice, and the answer is D. In this question, the answer is B. The answer would be E. And the answer would be D for this question and B for this question. What about tax cuts? The multiplier effect also applies when the government decides to cut or increase taxes. But changing taxes has less of an impact than government spending. Assume the MPC is 75, so the multiplier would be 4. If the government cuts taxes by 4 million, how much will consumer spending increase? Not 16 million. When they get the tax cut, consumers will save a million and spend 3 million. So the 3 million is the amount that would be magnified in the economy. 3 times 4 would mean that there's a $12 million increase in total spending. This is the formula to calculate the simple tax multiplier, but an easy way to remember this is just to know that if you calculate the spending multiplier, the tax multiplier is always 1 less. So if the spending multiplier was 4, then the tax multiplier would be 3. Also, it's important to remember whether the government is imposing a tax cut or they're imposing more taxes. So if there is actually an increase in taxes, that would decrease GDP because the tax multiplier is negative. And here's some practice questions with the answers. And the answer to this question would be E. And the answer to this question is B.